Karen Whitmore stood frozen in her pristine kitchen, clutching a pink flamingo-themed party invitation that had just fallen from her mailbox stack. The paper trembled in her manicured fingers as she read the cheerful script. You're invited to the annual Willowbrook HOA pool party, Saturday, July 15th, 2 to 6 p.m. Location: the Whitmore Pool, 1247 Sycamore Lane. Bring your swimsuit and appetite. Her crystal blue pool, her meticulously maintained, professionally cleaned, UV sanitized sanctuary that she'd spent $43,000 installing just last summer. What? The word exploded from her lips like a gunshot, causing her Persian cat, Princess Whiskers, to bolt from her sunny windowsill perch. Karen's hands shook as she grabbed her phone, her French-tipped nails clicking frantically against the screen. The HOA Facebook group loaded, and there it was, the post that made her blood pressure spike to dangerous levels. Janet Morrison, the HOA social coordinator, had shared a cheerful announcement, complete with stock photos of people splashing in pools and a caption that read, "So excited to announce our annual pool party. Thanks to our wonderful neighbor Karen for volunteering her beautiful backyard oasis for our community celebration. Can't wait to see everyone there." 47 likes, 23 shares, 12 comments of people saying they'd bring potato salad and asking about parking. Karen had never volunteered anything. She'd specifically moved to Willowbrook Estates because the HOA promised respectful boundaries and community-minded neighbors. Apparently, community-minded meant helping themselves to her property without so much as a phone call. Her doorbell chimed its melodic tune, and Karen strode to the front door with military precision. Through the frosted glass, she could see Janet Morrison's unmistakable silhouette, short, round, and wearing what appeared to be a sun hat the size of a small umbrella. Karen yanked open the door before Janet could ring again. "Janet, Karen?" Janet beamed, completely oblivious to the storm brewing behind Karen's perfectly applied makeup. "I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by to discuss the party logistics. I brought my clipboard." She waved a hot pink clipboard adorned with inspirational stickers. "The party logistics," Karen repeated slowly, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Oh yes. I figured we'd need to coordinate the setup. I'm thinking we'll need about 15 tables, maybe some of those cute string lights, and definitely a DJ setup near your pool house. My nephew Bradley just bought some new speakers that are absolutely incredible." "Stop." Karen held up one perfectly manicured hand. "Just stop talking." Janet's smile faltered slightly. Is something wrong?" Karen stepped closer, and Janet instinctively took a step back. "Janet, did I at any point in our acquaintance, and I use that term loosely, give you permission to use my pool for a party?" "Well, no, but I thought that I volunteer my backyard, my pool, my property, for 43 random neighbors to descend upon, like locusts?" Janet's face was beginning to turn an interesting shade of pink that clashed with her sun hat. "I just assumed, I mean, you have such a beautiful pool, and it's so big, and we need a venue, and you assumed." Karen's voice could have frozen. "Lava, you posted on social media, sent out invitations, and made commitments using my property without asking me. Is that correct?" "Karen, please, I'm sure we can work something out. The invitations are already sent. People are planning on coming. I've ordered 3 dozen hamburgers." "That sounds like a you problem, Janet." Karen stepped back and began closing the door, but Janet stuck her sensible shoe in the gap. "Wait, please, I made a mistake. Okay, I should have asked first. But Karen, 43 families are expecting this party. Some of them already bought gifts for the kids' activities I planned. Mrs. Patterson ordered a custom cake. We can't just cancel now." Karen paused. She could see the genuine panic in Janet's eyes, the way her clipboard was now shaking in her hands. For a split second, she almost felt sorry for the woman. Almost. Double quotes, "Janet, let me ask you something. If I decided to plan a community garage sale in your living room without asking, how would you feel?" "That's different, is it? Is it really?" Karen's voice rose slightly. "Because from where I stand, you've essentially decided that my private property is now community property. You've made me a hostess without my consent, committed me to expenses I never agreed to, and put me in a position where I either comply with your presumptuous demands or look like the neighborhood villain." Janet opened her mouth to respond, but Karen wasn't finished. "Here's what's going to happen. Janet, you are going to contact every single person who received that invitation. You're going to explain that you made an error. You're going to apologize for the confusion. And you're going to find another venue for your party." "But Karen, I'm not done." Karen's eyes narrowed. "And if I see one single person show up on my property on Saturday expecting a party, I will call the police and have them arrested for trespassing. Are we clear?" Janet's face cycled through several colors before settling on a mottled purple. Fine, Karen. You've made your point. But don't expect anyone in this neighborhood to forget how selfish you're being. These are families, Karen. Children who are looking forward to swimming and having fun. Children whose parents, apparently, never taught them about boundaries and consent." Karen shot back. "Now get off my property." Janet snatched her foot back, and Karen slammed the door with enough force to rattle the decorative glass panels. For 30 seconds, Karen stood with her back against the door, breathing heavily. Then she walked to her kitchen window and peered through the blinds. Janet was marching down the sidewalk, her sun hat bobbing indignantly, phone pressed to her ear. Karen could see her mouth moving rapidly, undoubtedly calling other HOA members to complain about the unreasonable behavior she'd just encountered. Karen's phone buzzed. A text from her next-door neighbor, Mike Rodriguez. "Hey Karen, saw the party post. That's really cool of you to host. Linda's making her famous 7-layer dip." Then another text from across the street. "Karen, so excited for Saturday. The kids have been talking about it all week." And another, "Do you need help setting up? I can bring my folding chairs." Karen's jaw clenched tighter with each message. This wasn't going to be as simple as Janet making a few phone calls. The entire neighborhood was already invested in this party. Janet had created a social obligation that would be impossible to gracefully escape from. She walked to her back patio doors and stared out at her pool. The afternoon sun made the water sparkle like diamonds. The infinity edge she'd specifically designed created the illusion that the water flowed seamlessly into her carefully landscaped garden. The integrated spa with its natural stone waterfall had been featured in Better Homes and Gardens just 3 months ago. It was perfect. It was hers. And apparently, 43 families thought they had a right to use it. Karen pulled out her phone and dialed her lawyer's number. "Stewart and Associates. This is Rebecca." "Rebecca, it's Karen Whitmore. I need to speak with David immediately. He's in a meeting, but I can tell him it's about property rights and trespassing. He'll want to take this call." 3 minutes later, David Stewart's familiar voice came through the phone. "Karen, what's the emergency?" Karen explained the situation in crisp, precise detail. David listened without interruption until she finished. "Well, legally speaking, you're completely in the right," he said. "Your property, your rules. But Karen, this is a neighborhood relations issue as much as a legal one. If you push this too hard, you could find yourself dealing with harassment complaints, social media backlash, maybe even targeted HOA violations. Are you suggesting I let them use my pool? I'm suggesting you consider the long-term consequences. Sometimes being right isn't the same as being smart." Karen hung up without saying goodbye. She stared at her pool for another long moment, then walked to her home office and sat down at her mahogany desk. She opened her laptop and began typing an email to the HOA board. Asterisk, to whom it may concern. Has come to my attention that a pool party has been planned at my residence without my knowledge or consent. I want to make it absolutely clear that I have not volunteered my property for this event, nor do I consent to its use for this purpose. Any individuals who arrive on my property on Saturday, July 15th, will be considered trespassers and will be dealt with accordingly. I trust this matter will be resolved promptly and professionally. Sincerely, Karen Whitmore, 1247 Sycamore Lane *. She hit send and immediately felt better. Let them try to paint her as the villain now. She had everything documented. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed Janet Morrison. Karen declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined by the third ring. Karen turned off her phone entirely. She made herself a cup of tea and settled into her reading chair by the window. Outside she could see neighbors walking by more frequently than usual, many of them slowing down to peer at her house with obvious curiosity. Word was spreading. At 6 p.m., her doorbell rang. Karen ignored it. It rang again at 6:15. At 6:30, someone knocked loudly on her door. Karen turned up her classical music and continued reading her book. By 7 p.m., her front yard had acquired 3 visitors, who seemed to be having an animated discussion while gesturing toward her house. One of them was Janet, still wearing her ridiculous sun hat. The other 2 were HOA board members Tom Brixton. By 9:45 p.m., Karen could hear the industrial hum of the pool pumps working through the night. She'd positioned herself in her upstairs bedroom, where she had a clear view of both her backyard and the crowd that had finally dispersed from her front lawn. Around 9 p.m., the AquaClear crew had arrived exactly on schedule, entering through her back gate like pool-draining ninjas. Danny Reeves, the crew chief, had initially tried to talk her out of the drainage. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you sure about this? Your pool's in perfect condition. This seems like an expensive way to solve what sounds like a neighbor dispute." "Danny, I'm paying you to drain a pool, not to provide relationship counseling," Karen had replied, handing him a credit card. "Just make it empty." Now, watching the water level drop inch by inch under the floodlights, Karen felt a satisfaction she hadn't experienced since winning her property line dispute with the city 2 years ago. Let them come with their bathing suits and pool noodles. Let them see what presumption got them. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Michelle in Portland, saw your neighborhood drama on the news." "Really, Karen? You made Channel 7 over a pool party?" Karen frowned and grabbed her laptop, searching for local news. There it was, a brief segment on Coin 7's late-night update. Neighborhood pool party. Dispute creates community tensions in Willowbrook Estates. They'd used file footage of a generic swimming pool and interviewed Tom Brixton, who managed to make her sound like a cartoon villain. "All we wanted was to bring the community together," Tom had said on camera, wearing his most sincere expression. Mrs. Whitmore has a beautiful pool that could accommodate everyone safely. We're just hoping she'll reconsider and remember what being a good neighbor means." Karen slammed the laptop shut. Being a good neighbor didn't mean being a doormat. Her landline rang at 10:30 p.m. "Karen, it's David Stewart. I just saw the news piece. What the hell are you doing?" "I'm protecting my property rights." "David, isn't that what you advised?" "I advised caution, not scorched earth tactics. Do you realize how this looks? You're going to be known as the woman who drained her pool to spite children. I'm going to be known as the woman who doesn't let people walk all over her. Karen, I've been your lawyer for 8 years. Trust me on this. Sure, making a mistake. The optics are terrible, and it's going to follow you long after this pool party is forgotten." After hanging up on David, Karen made herself a cup of chamomile tea and settled in to watch the progress. The pool was nearly half empty now, the underwater lights creating strange shadows on the exposed walls. It looked like an archaeological dig site, revealing layers of tile and plumbing that were usually hidden beneath 8 feet of crystal clear water. At midnight, her doorbell rang. Karen ignored it, but whoever was outside was persistent. The ringing continued for 5 full minutes before stopping. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Mike Rodriguez, your neighbor. Please open the door. I'm alone, and I just want to talk." Karen hesitated. Mike had always been reasonable. He was the neighbor who kept his lawn perfect without being obsessive about it, who collected packages for people when they were out of town, who had actually introduced himself when she'd moved in 3 years. "I'll go instead of just watching from behind curtains like everyone else." She went downstairs and peered through the peephole. Mike was standing on her porch in a hoodie and jeans, hands in his pockets, looking more tired than angry. Karen opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. "Mike, hey Karen, can we talk for a minute? It's midnight. I know. I saw the pool. Company truck in your backyard. I put 2 and 2 together." He gestured toward the back of her house, where the pump noise was clearly audible. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" Karen studied his face. There was no judgment there, just curiosity and maybe a little sadness. "Yes, I'm really doing this. Can I ask why? I mean, I get that Janet screwed up. She should have asked first, but this seems like a lot." Karen surprised herself by unlocking the chain and opening the door wider. "Do you want some coffee?" "This might take a while to explain." They sat in her kitchen while the coffee brewed, the sound of the pumps providing a steady backdrop to their conversation. "You know, I actually agree with you," Mike said, stirring sugar into his mug. "Janet was completely out of line. If someone planned a party in my backyard without asking, I'd be furious too." "Thank you, finally, someone with sense." "But Karen, Mike paused, choosing his words carefully. "This is going to make everything worse. You know that, right?" Karen set down her mug harder than necessary. "Mike, let me ask you something. If you don't draw a line somewhere, where does it end? Next year, Janet plans another party at my house because I agreed to it before. The year after that, maybe, someone decides my backyard is perfect for a wedding. Maybe the HOA decides my driveway is ideal for community parking during events. That's a pretty big slippery slope, is it? Because from where I sit, the slope already exists. I moved to a community with an HOA because I wanted clear rules and boundaries. Instead, I get neighbors who think my property is their property whenever it's convenient for them." Mike nodded slowly. "I can see that. But Karen, there's another way to look at this. What if this was an opportunity? An opportunity for what? To be the kind of neighbor people remember for the right reasons. To host something beautiful that brings people together. To be the person who saved the community pool party instead of the person who killed it." Karen stared at him. "Mike, they didn't give me that choice. They made the decision for me, then expected me to smile and go along with it. That's not an opportunity. That's manipulation, maybe. Or maybe it's just people being people, imperfect, thoughtless sometimes, but not malicious." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the pumps. "The pool will be empty by morning," Karen said finally. "And then what?" "And then 43 families will show up on Saturday expecting to swim, and they'll find a very expensive concrete hole in my backyard. And how do you think that's going to feel?" Karen looked at Mike sharply. "Are you trying to guilt me into changing my mind?" "No. I'm trying to understand if you've thought this through to the end. Because those families include kids, Karen, kids who've been excited about this for a week, kids who don't understand adult politics and property rights. They're just going to see a mean lady who took away their fun. That's not my responsibility. Mike, their parents should have taught them that you don't get to use other people's things without permission." Mike finished his coffee and stood up. "You're not wrong, Karen, but you're not right either. Sometimes being right isn't enough." After he left, Karen sat alone in her kitchen, staring out at the floodlit backyard where 3 men in Aquaclia uniforms were methodically draining away 18,000 gallons of water. The pool was now only about 2 feet deep, looking more like a weird modern art installation than a place for swimming. Her phone buzzed, a Facebook notification. Against her better judgment, she opened the app. The Willowbrook Estates Facebook group was still active despite the late hour. Someone had posted a photo of the Aquaclear truck in her driveway with the caption, "Looks like our neighbor is really going through with this. Heartbreaking to see how low some people will go. Comments were brutal. I can't believe someone would be this petty. My daughter cried when I told her the party might be canceled. This is exactly what's wrong with our society, no sense of community. Someone should report this to the HOA board. This kind of behavior is toxic. But there were a few defending her. Honestly, I don't blame her. Janet should have asked first. If someone planned a party at my house without permission, I'd be furious too. Maybe this will teach people to respect boundaries. Karen closed the app and went to bed. Though she doubted she'd sleep much, with the pump noise continuing through the night, she was wrong. Exhaustion overtook her around 2 a.m., and she slept deeply until her alarm went off at 7. When she looked out her bedroom window, her pool was completely empty. It was shocking, even though she'd orchestrated it herself. The deep end looked cavernous, like a concrete canyon in her backyard. The shallow end's gentle slope looked harsh and unwelcoming without water to soften its angles. The tile work that had cost her $8,000 looked stark and industrial under the morning sun. But it was empty. Completely, utterly empty. Karen showered, dressed carefully in a crisp white blouse and navy slacks, and made herself breakfast. She was eating her yogurt and granola when her doorbell rang at 8:30 a.m. She opened the door to find Janet Morrison, Tom Brixton, and Sandra Chen standing on her porch. All three looked like they hadn't slept well. Karen, Tom began, we need to discuss this situation rationally. Good morning to you too, Tom. Janet, Sandra, Karen. Sandra stepped forward. I think we can all agree this has gotten out of hand. We're prepared to make this right. Make what right? The communication error, Janet said quickly. I take full responsibility for not asking permission first. It was presumptuous and inappropriate. Karen raised an eyebrow. Go on. Tom cleared his throat. We're prepared to offer compensation for your trouble. We'll cover the cost of refilling your pool, extra cleaning, any inconvenience fees you deem appropriate. And we'll make sure nothing like this ever happens again, Sandra added. We'll implement new policies requiring written pay. Monday morning brought a new reality to Willowbrook Estates. Karen woke to find her front yard dotted with news vans and her empty pool trending on social media under the hashtag #EmptyPoolParty. The local story had been picked up by regional outlets, then national morning shows, and somehow transformed from neighborhood drama into feel-good content about community, resilience, and creative problem-solving. Karen made coffee and scrolled through her phone in amazement. The photos from Saturday's party were everywhere, kids playing in the empty deep end, families laughing around the concrete edges, the elaborate chalk murals that had appeared on the pool walls. Someone had created a TikTok video set to upbeat music showing the transformation, from expected pool party to unexpected community gathering. Her doorbell rang at 8 a.m. sharp. Ms. Whitmore, a young man in a suit, stood on her porch with a bouquet of flowers and an envelope. I'm from Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on the show to talk about your creative approach to neighborhood conflict resolution. My what now? The empty pool party? It's being hailed as a brilliant example of how communities can adapt and come together even when things don't go as planned. You've started a movement. Karen accepted the flowers but declined the interview. By noon, she'd received similar requests from 3 other morning shows, 2 podcasts, and something called The Real Housewives of Anywhere USA that she was pretty sure was a joke. Her phone buzzed with yet another text, but this one made her smile. It was from her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, the elderly widow 3 houses down. Karen dear, I want you to know that was the most entertaining Saturday I've had in years. Thank you for giving us all something to talk about. The response had been overwhelmingly positive, but Karen was too smart to think the story was over. Social media attention was fickle, and she suspected there would be consequences she hadn't anticipated yet. She was right. Tuesday brought a knock on her door from the city building inspector. Ma'am, I'm here about a complaint regarding an pool modification. Karen stared at him. I'm sorry, what? We received a report that you've altered your pool structure without proper permits. Can I take a look at the work that was done? Karen led him to the backyard, where her empty pool sat gleaming in the morning sun, still decorated with fading chalk art from Saturday's festivities. The inspector walked around the perimeter, taking notes and photos. Ma'am, I don't see any structural modifications here. This is just empty. That's correct. I had it drained. You had it drained. And someone reported this as an unpermitted modification. Apparently so. The inspector looked at his clipboard, then back at the empty pool, then at Karen. Ma'am, there's no permit required to drain a pool. This complaint is frivolous. I'm sorry for wasting your time. After he left, Karen called David Stewart. David, someone filed a false complaint with the city about my pool. Let me guess, someone from your HOA. That would be my assumption. Karen, this is exactly what I was worried about. You've won the battle, but now they're going to make your life difficult in a dozen small ways. Death by 1,000 paper cuts? So what do? Document everything. Keep records of every interaction, every complaint, every attempt at harassment, and Karen, consider whether this is really the hill you want to die on. That afternoon, Karen received a formal letter from the HOA board. She read it twice before calling David back. They're fining me for failure to maintain property in acceptable condition, she told him. Apparently, an empty pool violates the community aesthetics standards. How much? $50 a day until the issue is resolved. David was quiet for a moment. Karen, that's potentially $18,000 a year if you keep the pool empty. They're trying to force you to refill it. Can they do that? Unfortunately, yes. Most HOA agreements include clauses about property, maintenance, and community standards. The question is whether an empty pool actually violates those standards, and that's going to depend on the specific language in your HOA contract. Karen spent the evening reading her HOA agreement with a magnifying glass and a highlighter. The relevant section was frustratingly vague. All property modifications and maintenance decisions must be consistent with community aesthetic standards and subject to board approval. The problem was that there was no specific definition of aesthetic standards, which meant the board had broad discretion to decide what was and wasn't acceptable. Wednesday brought another surprise. Karen was leaving for her morning walk when she noticed something strange about her empty pool. Someone had been there overnight. The chalk drawings from Saturday had been supplemented with new artwork, professional quality murals painted directly onto the concrete walls. The octopus in the deep end had been transformed into a stunning underwater seascape complete with coral reefs and tropical fish. The shallow end featured a desert landscape with cacti and rock formations that seemed to grow right out of the pool's natural contours. A small placard near the diving board read, Community Art Installation No. 1, created by Willowbrook Neighbors. Please add your own contribution. Karen stood at the edge of her pool, coffee mug in hand, staring at the transformation. It was beautiful, genuinely beautiful in a way that made her empty concrete cavity look intentional and artistic rather than stubborn and spiteful. Her phone rang. It was Janet Morrison. Karen, did you see what happened to your pool? I'm looking at it right now, Jeanette. Did you organize this? Not exactly. I mean, I might have mentioned to Linda Martinez that it seemed like a shame to waste such a great canvas. And Linda might have mentioned it to her sister who's an art teacher. And Sarah Chen might have suggested that community art projects are good for property values. Janet? Okay, yes. I might have facilitated some late-night artistic collaboration. But Karen, look at it. It's gorgeous. Karen had to admit it was gorgeous. The murals transformed her empty pool from an act of defiance into something that looked like it belonged in a museum. Did you get permission from the city for this? Actually, yes. Sarah looked up the regulations. And temporary art installations on private property don't require permits, as long as they're not permanent structural changes. We used washable paint that will fade naturally over time. Karen found herself smiling, despite her instinct to be annoyed about the unauthorized use of her property. Janet, you did it again. You made decisions about my pool without asking me. There was a long pause. Oh my God, you're right, Karen. I'm so sorry. Janet, relax. This time, I actually like what you did. But next time, ask first. Even if you think I'll say yes. That evening, Karen received a visit from Tom Brixton. Karen, we need to talk about the HOA situation. You mean the ridiculous fines you're trying to impose? Look, I'll be straight with you. Sandra pushed for those fines, and I went along with it because I was still angry about the pool party situation. But after seeing what happened Saturday, and now with these murals, I think we might have been too hasty. Karen invited him in, curious where this was going. The thing is, Tom continued, settling into her living room chair, your empty pool has gotten more positive attention for our neighborhood than anything we've done in 5 years. Property values are actually up slightly just from the media coverage. We've had 3 families inquire about moving here specifically because they heard about our creative community spirit. So you want to withdraw the fines? I want to propose a deal. We'll rescind the fines and officially classify your pool as a temporary community art installation. In exchange, you work with us to develop guidelines for future community events so we never have another miscommunication, like the one that started this whole mess. Karen considered the offer. What kind of guidelines? Simple stuff. Required advance notice for any events on private property. Written permission from property owners. Clear agreements about setup, cleanup, and liability. Basic respect and communication. That sounds reasonable. But Tom, what about Sandra? She seemed pretty determined to make my life difficult. Tom sighed. Sandra's Sandra. She doesn't like being wrong, and she really doesn't like being publicly wrong, but she's outnumbered on the board now. Mike Rodriguez has agreed to join as our 5th member, and he's firmly in the Karen was right camp. After Tom left, Karen walked out to her pool and turned on the underwater lights. The murals looked even more stunning at night, the painted fish seeming to swim in the artificial light while the desert landscape created dramatic shadows. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Saw Tom leaving. Hope he came with good news. Also, Linda wants to know if you'd be interested in hosting a community art night next month. Actual advance notice. This time, promise. Karen typed back, tell Linda I'll consider it. And Mike, thanks for joining the board. I think you'll be good at it. Thursday morning brought an unexpected visitor, her elderly neighbor. Mrs. Patterson, accompanied by a woman Karen didn't recognize. Karen dear, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. This is my daughter, Rebecca. She's an art therapist from Portland, and she drove down specifically to see your pool. Rebecca Patterson Miller was probably in her 50s, with paint-stained fingers, and the kind of practical clothes that suggested she spent more time in studios than boardrooms. Ms. Whitmore, what you've created here is remarkable. Not just the physical space, but the social dynamic. 3 weeks after the infamous empty pool party, Karen woke to find a small crowd gathered at her front gate. Not an angry mob this time, but what appeared to be tourists with smartphones and cameras, taking pictures of her house. Excuse me, she called from her front porch. Can I help you with something? A middle-aged woman with a Visit Oregon t-shirt looked up sheepishly. Oh, are you the pool lady? We drove down from Seattle specifically to see the famous empty pool. My daughter saw the TikTok videos and insisted we make a detour on our way to California. Karen blinked. You drove from Seattle to see my pool? Well, not just the pool, the woman's husband added quickly. We're doing a whole tour of Pacific Northwest internet-famous locations. Last week we went to that coffee shop where the barista does latte art that looks like customers' pets. Karen found herself giving impromptu tours to 3 different groups that morning, explaining the story behind the empty pool and the community murals. By noon, she'd started charging $5 per person and figured she might as well make it official. Her phone rang as she was walking the latest group of visitors, a family from Phoenix, back to their car. Karen, it's Jennifer Walsh from the Tribune. I have some interesting news. The City Council is considering recognizing your pool as an official community art installation. It would come with a small historical marker and inclusion in the city's cultural tourism map. Are you serious? Dead serious? Apparently your pool has generated more positive media coverage for Willowbrook than anything else in the past decade. The mayor wants to capitalize on it. After Jennifer hung up, Karen stood in her driveway contemplating the surreal turn her life had taken. A month ago, she'd been a private person who rarely spoke to her neighbors. Now she was apparently a tourist attraction and community art pioneer. Her contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Sandra Chen, who looked uncharacteristically nervous. Karen, do you have a few minutes to talk? They sat in Karen's living room, where Sandra fidgeted with her purse strap before finally speaking. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the political kind I'm good at. Okay, I was wrong about the pool situation. I was wrong about the fines. And I was especially wrong about trying to make your life difficult after you'd already proven your point. Sandra took a deep breath. I don't like being publicly contradicted, and I handled it badly, very badly. Karen studied Sandra's face. Why are you telling me this now? Because my granddaughter visited last weekend, and she wanted to see the cool empty pool all her friends were talking about online. When I brought her over here, she asked me why I was being mean to the lady who made something so awesome for kids to enjoy. And what did you tell her? I told her that sometimes adults get so focused on being right that they forget to be kind. Then she asked me if I was going to apologize to you, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. Sandra reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is a formal letter rescinding all HOA fines related to your pool. The board voted unanimously to reclassify it as a community amenity rather than a maintenance violation. Thank you, Sandra. That means a lot. There's something else. We'd like to propose making you the official HOA liaison for community events and creative projects. It would come with a small stipend and decision-making authority over how neighborhood common spaces are used. Karen raised an eyebrow. You want to pay me to do what Janet was doing for free? We want to pay you to do what Janet was trying to do, but with your organizational skills and attention to detail. Janet has great ideas, but she's not great at logistics or ... asking permission before making commitments. That afternoon, Karen received a call from Rebecca Patterson Miller, the art therapist from Portland. Ms. Whitmore, I've gotten approval and funding for the teen art therapy workshop I mentioned. Would October 15th work for you? We'd have 12 teenagers and 3 adult supervisors, and we'd be working on trauma-informed art therapy techniques using community space. Rebecca, can I ask you something? Why is this project important to you? There was a pause. Because I was one of those at-risk teens once. 25 years ago, I was in foster care and headed towards some very bad choices. An art teacher took a chance on me, let me help paint a mural at a community center, and it changed the trajectory of my entire life. Sometimes kids just need to see that adults believe they can create something beautiful instead of just causing problems. October 15th works, Karen said. What do you need from me? Just space and permission. We'll handle everything else. That evening, Karen found herself in an unexpected place, Janet Morrison's living room, helping plan the Halloween party. That was apparently happening whether Karen wanted it or not. Okay, Janet said, spreading architectural drawings across her coffee table. I'm thinking we turn the pool into a haunted maze. We can build temporary walls using foam panels, create different themed rooms in each section, and use the deep end as the grand finale with a fog machine. Karen examined the drawings. Janet, this is actually brilliant, But how much is it going to cost? That's the beautiful part, Eve. Gotten donations from every family in the neighborhood. Some people are contributing money, others are providing materials or labor. The whole community is invested in making this work. Mike Rodriguez, who had become a regular attendee at these planning sessions, looked up from his tablet where he was calculating electrical requirements. Karen, I think you need to see something. He showed her a spreadsheet that made her jaw drop. The Halloween party had a budget of nearly $4,000, all raised through voluntary neighborhood contributions. People are excited about this, Mike explained. They see what happened with the empty pool party, and they want to be part of creating something special again. But what if it's terrible? What if nobody comes, or something goes wrong? Or Karen, Janet interrupted gently, you turned a canceled pool party into the most talked about neighborhood event in years. I think you can handle a Halloween party. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen's backyard became a construction zone. Neighbors she'd barely spoken to before appeared daily with power tools and enthusiasm, transforming her empty pool into an elaborate haunted attraction. Tom Brixton, who had apparently missed his calling as a theatrical set designer, was building movable walls that could create different maze configurations. Linda Martinez was sewing costumes for the volunteer actors who would populate the haunted rooms. Even Sandra Chen had thrown herself into the project, using her teacher's skills to organize volunteer schedules and safety protocols. You know, Mike said one evening, as they surveyed the progress, I think this might be even more elaborate than your original pool installation. It's definitely more collaborative, Karen admitted, though I'm still not sure how I became the person who hosts neighborhood events in an empty pool. Maybe because you're the person who was brave enough to empty the pool in the first place? Sometimes you have to break something before you can build something better. The Halloween party was scheduled for October 29th, and by the 25th, Karen was simultaneously excited and terrified. Her phone had been ringing constantly with RSVPs, not just from the neighborhood, but from people who'd heard about the event through social media and wanted to attend. We've got over 200 people confirmed, Janet reported during their final planning meeting. I think we need to expand the parking plan. 200 people. Karen felt dizzy. Janet, my backyard can't hold 200 people. Actually, Mike consulted his tablet. According to my calculations, we can safely accommodate about 250 in the current configuration. The pool maze will naturally regulate flow, and we've got the rest of the yard set up for food and socializing. Karen looked around her living room at the group of neighbors who had become her planning committee. A month and a half ago, she would have called the police if she'd found this many people in her house without permission. Now she was making coffee for them and genuinely enjoying their company. Okay, she said finally. 200 people. It is, but I want safety protocols for everything. Backup plans for weather. And absolutely no one goes in the pool area without signing a waiver. Already handled, Sandra said, producing a thick folder of documents. Insurance, waivers, emergency, contact information, safety protocols, and backup plans for everything from rain to power outages. 2 days before the party, Karen received a call that changed everything. Ms. Whitmore, this is Channel 7 News. We'd like to do a live broadcast from your Halloween event. Would you be available for an on-air interview? A live broadcast. We're doing a feature on creative community building in suburban neighborhoods. Your empty pool has become a symbol of how communities can adapt and thrive when people think outside the box. Karen agreed, then immediately regretted it. A live television broadcast would mean even more people, more attention, more things that could go wrong. She called Janet in a panic. Janet, Channel 7 wants to broadcast live from the party. What do? We make sure it's the best damn Halloween party Oregon has ever seen. Janet replied without hesitation. Karen, this is incredible. We're going to be on television. But what if something goes wrong? What if the maze doesn't work? Or someone gets hurt?